Title: Beneath the Lamp of Hope. Seeds of Light in Joseon. 1. A World in Need. In the late 19th century, the land of Joseon, now Korea, lay cloaked in silence and struggle. Centuries of Confucian tradition shaped a society rooted in hierarchy, but it was also one grappling with isolation and illness. Education was a privilege of the elite, and healthcare, sparse and pre-modern, was often left to traditional herbalists and spiritual rituals. The poor suffered in shadows, illiterate and untreated. Yet change was stirring, carried not by kings, but by quiet souls with a calling. 2. The Spark of a Mission. Across the Pacific, in the chapels of America, a different kind of fire burned. Young men and women, stirred by the Great Awakening, heard God's call to go forth into distant lands, not to conquer, but to serve. Among them were Horace G. Underwood, a theologian, and Dr. Horace N. Allen, a physician. They did not speak the language nor understand the culture, but they carried with them two sacred lights, the Bible and compassion. 3. The Leap into the Unknown. Underwood arrived in Korea in 1885, his feet touching a land unfamiliar yet deeply stirring. Not long after, Dr. Allen followed, initially as a medical advisor to the American legation, but soon, he was called to act. When Prince Min Yong-ik was gravely injured in a political assassination attempt, Dr. Allen's Western medical intervention saved the prince's life. This miraculous recovery opened the palace gates, not just for medicine, but for mercy. 4. Building in Love and Struggle. With royal permission and public intrigue, Allen established Wonghaiwan, the first modern hospital in Korea, later renamed Jijeongwan. Here, Eastern patients were treated with Western methods, and young Korean minds were trained as medical assistants. It was not just medicine, it was healing on multiple levels. Word spread like spring wind. Meanwhile, Underwood, alongside Mary Scranton and Henry Appenzeller, founded schools. Ewha Girls' School, now Ewha Women's University, Pai Chai School, and Yonsei's early roots. For the first time, girls were taught to read. Boys learned not only the alphabet but integrity. These missionaries did not bring colonial arrogance, they listened, learned the Korean tongue, and sat with the poor, often sharing their food, offering prayers in whispers, and teaching with chalk and grace. 5. Connection and Change. Among the many children, there was Park Esther who entered Ewha Haptong. She later became one of the first female doctors in Joseon. That small seed of learning changed her life. At Jijeongwan, Park Seo-young, the son of a Baekjang, received medical education and later became a physician who raised many students. As churches grew around these schools and hospitals, they became sanctuaries, not just for faith, but for literacy, nursing, and social change. Missionaries taught sanitation, nutrition, and hygiene. They did not just treat disease, they prevented it. 6. Resistance and sacrifice. But their journey was not without trial. Political resistance rose against foreigners. Some Koreans viewed the missionaries as threats to tradition. Missionaries were mocked, even attacked. Their institutions were under constant scrutiny. Yet they did not retreat. When the Japanese annexation of Korea began in 1910, the missionaries stood beside the oppressed. Schools became places of quiet resistance. Nurses stitched wounds both literal and spiritual. Some missionaries were expelled, others jailed. And still, they remained. They wrote books in Korean, translated the Bible into Hangul, and protected their students like their own children. Their perseverance in the face of adversity became a moral compass for the generations they touched. 7. A Changed Land. Decades passed. Korea endured war, occupation, and division. But beneath the ashes, the seeds once planted by the missionaries blossomed. Yonsei University, birthed from medical training at Jijeongwan, became a global medical research hub. Ewha became a symbol of women's education. Severance Hospital, named after a generous American benefactor, became the flagship of modern Korean healthcare. Missionary-descended hospitals introduced X-rays, surgeries, and later, cancer treatments. Their former students became professors, ministers, and community leaders. Korean Christianity took root not as an imported product, but as a contextualized, homegrown faith, with education and healing at its heart. 8. A legacy of light. Today, Korea is a nation of global influence, home to some of the best doctors, scholars, and scientists. But the path to this miracle began under lanterns lit in wooden schools and makeshift clinics by foreigners who loved without agenda. In Jijungwon's old stone walls, now preserved at Severance, a plaque reads, "To heal, to teach, to love." This was the gospel the missionaries lived, not just in word, but in deed. Epilogue. The story lives on. In a small rural church in Gangwon-do, an old woman kneels in prayer. On the wall behind her hangs a faded photo of Mary Scranton with her first 5 Ewha students. The woman's granddaughter now studies pediatrics at Yonsei, dreaming of building clinics in Cambodia. The lamp of hope is passed on, not by force, but by love. As Korea shines, it remembers. The missionaries did not merely bring education or medicine, they brought dignity. They came not to lead, but to walk beside. And in doing so, they left a legacy not carved in marble, but written in hearts, a story of transformation, lit by faith, told in lives lived fully, lovingly, and freely. The end.